Hi, and welcome to video number 2 on building my teardrop trailer. Today I'm going to be taking a router and I'm going to be trimming the edges and also cutting out the doors of the middle panel of the profile, the sides of my teardrop. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, the bit that I'm going to use in the router is a white side combo trim bit. This is a carbide bit. It has a bearing on the top and a bearing on the bottom. So what I do is I put this bearing on my pattern, and then the bit cuts the material, the plywood, to the same dimension and exactly the same profile as my pattern. So I can either put my pattern on the top or I can put my pattern on the bottom. And as we get into the construction of the teardrop, you'll see me use both of them. I bought this combo bit just so I could avoid buying two expensive bits. Seems to be working pretty well, and I really like the white side stuff. I've got a couple other ones and one more that you'll see today. The router that I'm using is a Bosch 2 1/4 horse router. This is relatively new for me. Actually, I just bought it for this project. I have an old 1.5 horse Ryobi router that just wasn't up to the task. So I bought this router. I really like it. It's got an accessory base, a different base, and it's a plunge base. You'll see me use that in a little while. I also put this adapter plate on the bottom. I got this from Rockler. This is pretty cool. It allows me to put guide bushings in here, which you'll see in a little while also. But the nice thing about it is it makes it wider. So I've got a real stable base to hold on to, and so it helps me to guide the router. So you'll see me using that. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bit into the router and get ready to cut. Okay, so now I've got the bit in the router, and I need to adjust the router so it rides on the template and makes the cut. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. But you can see right here, I don't know whether you can see it or not, but there's a bearing, and so what I will do is I will loosen this on the router, and I will raise the router up so that the bearing is riding on the template and the cutters are going to be riding on the plywood, which is what I'm trying to cut. I think that'll do it. Okay. Now routers are pretty loud, so I'm going to go ahead and put on some hearing protection, and we'll get cutting here. So there we have it. Pretty much a perfect, or just about perfect, trace of the pattern. So if I've done the pattern right, the plywood underneath should be the same shape. So the next thing to do is to cut out the door. I'll show you how that's done. Okay, for cutting out the door, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to move the router from this base, which is the fixed base, to this base, which is the plunge base. So I just open this up, press this, lift it up, twist it. Line up the marks. Let's see if I can get it in the right way. Right way. Backwards. The marks, adjust it, drop the router in, and we're switched to the plunge base. Now, for the bit that I'm going to use because this is the door is on the inside, so there's nothing I can really trace against using one of the bearing bits like I did with the combo bit. What I will use is what's called a spiral upcut bit, and this spiral upcut bit is also made by Whiteside. This is a 1/4 inch solid carbide spiral upcut. What this does, it kind of looks like a drill bit that's been cut off. So the way the router spins is when it spins, it's going to actually lift the chips, and it's going to lift them up and pull them out of the hole that I'm going to be creating. So when I use the plunge router, I'll take the router, I'll put it on the corner, and then I'll push the bit down into the material, and then go along it and cut the groove. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into the router. Actually, I'm not going to do that quite yet. So you may ask, okay, so how do I trace this pattern? I use what's called a guide bushing, and this is just a brass insert that sits in here in the router. And this brass insert then rides along the pattern, and then the bit goes down through the center of it and cuts the groove. So this insert fits in here like this. If I can hang on to the parts. And screws down. So you can see now this guide bushing is in here, and this will fit into this groove. Now, my router bit. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this is concentric. So this is just a little cone-shaped plug that goes through the guide bushing. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Goes through the guide bushing. I plunge the router down a little bit. Line it up with the chuck. And make sure everything's centered up pretty good. Which it seems to be. So, I'll go ahead and put in the bit. Okay. So the bit is now in the router, and so when I set it down here, you can see for sure. So it'll do this, and then I will use this, and I'll plunge the bit down into the material and then route, just by guiding it along the edge here. All right. Now, as you can see on this router, you've got this little turret right here, and this stops. So as this plunges down, it hits this stop. Let me see how that works. Okay. Because this bit is solid carbide, it's really hard, but it's really brittle. So if I push it too hard, I could break the bit, and the bits are pretty expensive. So what I want to do is I want to make my cuts. In each pass, I only want to cut about as deep or less than the diameter of the router, of the bit. And the bit is a 1/4 inch bit. So what I do is I will make the first pass. That's actually 0, so it's not cutting at all. Then I'll turn this turret and go down, and it'll give me about 1/8 of an inch, a little bit more. And just keep turning this turret and making passes until I've cut through the material. I thought this was pretty slick the first time I saw it, so and it seems to work pretty well. Okay, we're about ready to route here, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and plug in the router. Get my hearing protection. Set my turret for the first indentation. Make sure my router is back in the pocket here. Turn it on. So as you can see, makes a nice groove here. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and make some more cuts, deeper and deeper and deeper until I finally cut through the piece. Okay, this is my 6th pass, and I think that I'm about ready to go through, so I'm pretty sure that it'll go through on this particular pass. Okay, now, there we have it, an almost instant door. That sure beats cutting it out with a jigsaw. Alright, as I was looking at this, I noticed that it did have a little flaw right here. And right here is, I don't know whether you can see that or not, but there's a little hump right there. And I think what happened is I got a little bit of sawdust in here that the bearing was riding up against, and the sawdust made it a little bit wider and so put a little hump. This really isn't a problem. It's going to be covered with molding. I just need to make sure that the door is oriented correctly. So I've gone ahead and marked the door so I know which side it goes on, and so I get the door in there correctly, and that this door goes on this side panel.